Alien girl thought Doggy style was just a joke until the human gave her a live demo. The crimson-skinned alien stretched languidly on her bed, silver hair cascading over her shoulders as she gazed through the panoramic window at the barren landscape of Echo 17. The distant mountains looked like jagged teeth against the purple-huge sky of two small moons beginning their nightly ascent. So tell me more about these Earth customs, Kara said, adjusting her pale gray pajamas. Your species has such strange rituals. Commander Will Travis leaned against the door frame, his muscular frame still encased in the heavy dark combat armor that had become like a second skin during their 3-month deployment. His rugged features softened into a smile that made Kara's heart flutter in a way she couldn't quite understand. Well, what do you want to know? He asked, his deep voice carrying that confident tone that seemed inherent to humans, especially this particular specimen. Anything wrecking, she replied, tucking her legs beneath her. Your mating rituals are particularly amusing. So many positions with such colorful names. Will chuckled, running a hand through his short brown hair. Yeah, I suppose we do get creative with the terminology. Like what? Kavar's bright eyes gleamed with innocent curiosity. Well, Will said, a mischievous glint in his eye as he moved further into her quarters. There's the missionary, the cowgirl, the reverse cowgirl. Those sound ridiculous. Kavara laughed, the sound like tinkling bells. And then there's Doggy style, he added with a smirk. Kara's laughter intensified. Doggy style? What in the galaxy is that supposed to be? It's a Will hesitated, suddenly aware of the conversational territory they were entering. Is it like this? Cabra asked playfully, dropping onto all fours on her bed, looking back at him with wide innocent eyes. Like your Earth canines. Will's breath caught in his throat. The sight of Kavar on all fours, her silver hair falling around her face, her scarlet skin practically glowing against the pale gray of her pajamas, it was enough to make his armor feel several sizes too small. Yeah, he managed, his voice rougher than intended. Something like that. Why would humans name a position after an animal? She asked, still maintaining the pose. Completely oblivious to the effect she was having on him, Will cleared his throat. Well, it's because the position resembles how a dog's mate. Car's expression shifted from amusement to dawning comprehension. Her scarlet skin somehow flushed an even deeper red as she quickly sat back on her heels. Oh, she whispered, eyes wide. Oh, the silence that followed was deafening. Will rubbed the back of his neck, searching for anything to say. I should probably, he began. Would you like some tea? Kavara blurted simultaneously. They both laughed, the tension breaking slightly. Tea would be great, Will said, grateful for the distraction. Kavara nodded and moved to the small kitchenette in her quarters as she prepared the alien equivalent of tea, a purple liquid that smelled like cinnamon and tasted like mint. Will removed his heavy gauntlets and placed them on the small table. So Kar set her back to him as she worked. How long have you been stationed at Echo 17? 3 months. At same as you, Will replied, watching the graceful movements of her slender form. Though it feels longer sometimes. The isolation? She asked, glancing over her shoulder. Partly, he admitted, but also the constant work, surveying, reporting, defending against those indigenous creatures. The SCRS? Kavara nodded. They quite persistent. That's one word for them. Will snorted. Bloodthirsty is another. Kavar returned with 2 steaming cups, handing one to Will. Their fingers brushed and she felt that strange flutter again. Your species is fascinating, she said, sitting across from him. So physically strong yet so emotionally complex. And yours isn't? Will raised an eyebrow. The lien's value, logic and efficiency, she explained. The emotions are secondary. Is that why you're out here to study emotional humans up close? Kavara smiled. Perhaps, or perhaps I'm just a poor example of Aryan. Will's eyes met hers. I think you're a perfect example of whatever you are. The compliment hung in the air between them, neither quite sure how to proceed. Kavara sipped her tea, hiding her smile behind the cup. Tomorrow's expedition will be challenging, Will said, changing the subject. The southern quadrant has shown increased Skrill activity. I've updated the defense protocols, Kavara replied, and reinforced the perimeter sensors. Always thinking ahead, Will nodded appreciatively. That's why you're the best tech specialist we've got, and you're the best security commander, she returned, even if your mating terminology is absurd. They both laughed, and for a moment the vastness of space and the dangers of Echo 7 seemed distant in this small room. With the purple sky darkening outside the window, they were just 2 beings enjoying each other's company as the night wore on. Their conversation flowed easily from work to personal histories, from cultural differences to shared experiences. When Will finally stood to leave, there was a reluctance in his movements. I should let you rest, he said, collecting his gauntlets. Thank you for the cultural education, Kavar replied with a small smile. At the doorway he paused. Same time tomorrow, I'd like that, she said softly. As the door closed behind him, Kavar returned to her window, watching the twin moons of Echo 17 rise fully into the Night sky. She found herself thinking about Earth customs, about will, and about positions named after Earth animals. She smiled to herself. Perhaps there was more to learn about humans than she had initially thought. The southern quadrant of Echo 17 was a wasteland of jagged rock formations and deep ravines. Will led the small expedition team, his pulse rifle at the ready as they navigated the treacherous terrain. Caro followed close behind, her scanner sweeping the area for signs of Skrill activity. Readings are fluctuating, she reported, frowning at her device. There's some kind of interference. Will signaled for the team to halt. Could be the mineral deposits or a high-pitched screech cut through the air, followed by another, then dozens more SCRS near Aaron with shouted defensive formation. The creatures emerged from the ravines like a wave of nightmares, six-limbed predators with exoskeletons that gleam like oil in the alien sunlight. Their mandibles clicked hungrily as they scuttled toward the team. There's too many. Corporal Hayes yelled, his rifle spitting blue energy bolts into the horde. Will made a split-second decision, fall back to the transport. Hayes, Rodriguez, cover our retreat. As the team scrambled backward, Will grabbed cars armed. There's a cave system to the east, we can lose them there and circle back to the transport. Without waiting for a response, he pulled her away from the main group, firing behind them as they ran. The screams of the SCRS followed them, echoing off the rocks. They reached the cave entrance just as the sky darkened with an approaching storm. Will pushed Kavara inside, then followed both of them, breathing hard. The others, Kara gasped. They'll make it to the transport, Will assured her, though uncertainty tinged his voice. Hayes knows the protocol. A flash of lightning illuminated the cave entrance, followed by a deafening crack of thunder. Rain began to pour down, creating a curtain of water across the opening. Looks like we're stuck here until the storm passes, Will said, activating his suit's light. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing a tunnel that extended deeper into the mountain. Kavra checked her scanner, no Skrill signatures inside. We should be safe. Will nodded, removing his helmet. His face was stray with sweat, a small cut on his cheek bleeding slightly. You okay? Yes, Kavar replied, though her hands trembled slightly. That was closer than I'd like. Will's expression softened. He reached out his gloved hand, gently touching her shoulder. You did good out there, kept your cool. Liens are trained for emergency situations, she said, but her voice lacked its usual confidence. Will began removing pieces of his armor, setting them carefully against the cave wall. This storm could last hours, might as well get comfortable. Kra watched as he stripped down to his undersuit, a form-fitting black garment that highlighted every muscle of his powerful human physique. She felt that now familiar flutter in her chest, stronger than before. You're staring, Will said with a small smile. Kavara blinked, embarrassed. I was just reserving human anatomy for scientific purposes, of course, he replied, his smile widening. And what does science say about human anatomy? That it's she searched for the right word. Impressive. The air between them seemed to thicken. Will moved closer, his eyes never leaving hers. And what about Lien anatomy? He asked, his voice lower. Is that also worthy of scientific observation? Car's breath caught. Perhaps, though I lack comparative data. When could remedy that? Will suggested, now standing directly before her. Outside the storm raged, but inside the cave a different kind of electricity crackled between them. Kavra reached up, her scarlet fingers tracing the cut on his cheek. You're injured, she whispered. It's nothing, he replied, his hand covering hers, keeping it against his face. Their eyes locked, and in that moment all the cultural differences, all the protocols and regulations seemed to fade away. They were just two beings drawn to each other across the vastness of space and species. Will leaned down, his lips meeting hers in a tentative kiss. Kavara froze for a moment, then responded, her arms wrapping around his neck as the kiss deepened. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing heavily. I've wanted to do that since the first time I saw you, Will admitted, even though I'm not human. Carr asked, vulnerability in her eyes. Because you're you, he replied simply. Their second kiss was more urgent, on hands exploring, bodies pressing closer. Will's fingers tangled in her silver hair as Kara's hands mapped the contours of his muscular back. They sank to the cave floor, Will spreading his thermal blanket beneath them. In the dim light of his suit lamp, Cav's scarlet skin seemed to glow with an inner fire. Are you sure? Will asked, hovering above her. Yes, Kavara breathed. Show me how humans express affection. Show me everything. As the storm continued outside, they discovered each other's bodies, learning the differences and similarities between their species. Will was gentle yet passionate, guiding Kavara through human intimacy with patience and care. For Kavara, the experience was a revelation so different from the clinical emotionless approach to mating among her own kind. In the aftermath, they lay entwined, Cav's head resting on Will's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. So that's what all the fuss is about, she murmured, tracing patterns on his skin. Will laughed softly. How that's one way to put it. Humans place great importance on physical intimacy, she observed. It's not just Physical will said, his fingers combing through her silver hair. It's emotional. 2. A connection. Kavra propped herself up on one elbow, studying his face. Is that what this is, a connection? What do you think? He asked, his eyes serious. Before she could answer, her scanner beeped. She reached for it, frowning at the display. The storm's passing, she said. And there's a transmission from base. They're sending a rescue team. Will set up reality intruding on their moment. We should get ready. As they dressed and gathered their equipment, a new tension hung between them, the uncertainty of what would happen once they returned to Echo 17 in the structured environment of the station. At the cave entrance, paused. Turning to Kavara, what happened here? I don't regret it. Kav's expression was unreadable for a moment, then she smiled. Neither do I, though I believe I still have much to learn about human customs. Will grinned. I'd be happy to continue your education. The rescue team's lights appeared in the distance as they stepped out into the alien twilight, their shared experience binding them in ways neither had anticipated. The medical bay of Echo 17 hummed with activity as Dr. Parsons reviewed the results on his holographic display. His dark eyebrows furrowed in concentration, then rose in surprise. This is remarkable, he muttered, glancing up at Will and Kavara, who sat side by side on the examination table. It had been 3 days since their rescue from the cave, 3 days of stolen glances across the command center, secret touches in the corridors, and nights spent exploring their newfound intimacy in the privacy of Will's ERS. But protocol demanded a full medical examination after any extended exposure to Echo 17's environment, which had brought them here. What's remarkable, Doc? Will asked, his hand discreetly finding Kavara behind the cover of his body. Dr. Parsons adjusted his glasses. Well, according to these scans, your physiologies are significantly more compatible than our previous research suggested. Kavara tilted her head. Compatible in what way? In almost every way, the doctor replied, excitement creeping into his voice. Your biochemistry, your cellular structure. There are differences, of course, but far fewer than we theorized. It's as if what will prompted when the doctor trailed off, as if your species were designed to be compatible. Dr. Parsons finished, his eyes gleaming with scientific curiosity. Will and Kavara exchanged glances, both thinking of their intimate encounters but saying nothing. There's more. The doctor continued, oblivious to their silent communication. These readings suggest potential reproductive compatibility. Kavara's silver eyebrows shot up. Reproductive? You mean theoretically? Yes. Dr. Parsons nodded enthusiastically. Human and Lon genetic material could potentially combine to create offspring. The room fell silent. Will's grip on Carr's hand tightened. That's quite a discovery, Will finally said, his voice carefully neutral. It's revolutionary, Dr. Parsons exclaimed. I'll need to run more tests, of course, and I'll have to report this to both Earth Command and the Lien Science Directorate. This could change everything we understand about interspecies relations. As the doctor turned back to his console, typing furiously, Will leaned closer to Kavara. You okay? He whispered. Her scarlet face had paled slightly. I'm not sure on Lia. Even ing mating outside our species is taboo. We should talk about this privately, Will suggested, standing up. Doc, are we cleared to go? Dr. Parsons waved them off distractedly. Yes, but I'll need you both back tomorrow for more detailed scans. They left the medical bay in silence, walking through the station's corridors without their usual banter. When they reached Will's quarters, the door had barely closed before Kavara spoke. This changes things, she said, pacing the small room. Will sat on the edge of his bed, watching her. Does it have to? Don't you see? Kra turned to him, her eyes wide. If this information gets out, we'll become specimens, test subjects. Every scientist in 2 galaxies will want to study us. Let them try. Will said, his jaw setting in that stubborn way Kavra had come to recognize and admire. I'm a commander, not a Labat. Kav's expression softened. She moved to stand between his legs, her slender fingers tracing the line of his face. Your human defiance is showing, she murmured. Is that a bad thing? He asked, his hands finding her waist. No, she admitted, it's one of the things I find most fascinating about your species. Humans face the impossible and simply refuse to accept it. Will pulled her closer. And what do Liens do? We calculate probabilities, we make logical decisions. We don't. She hesitated. We don't feel like this. Like what? Will prompted, his voice low. Like I would defy my own people's taboos for you, she whispered. Like I would risk becoming an outcast among Liens to be with a human. Will stood, bringing their bodies flush against each other. Is that what you want? To be with me? Yes, Kavar breathed, the admission sending a thrill through her against all logic and reason. Yes. Their lips met in a passionate kiss, hands roaming bodies pressing closer. When they broke apart, both were breathing heavily. We should be more careful now, Will said reluctantly. If what Parson says is true. Kavra nodded. On Luria, contraception is unnecessary. Our reproductive cycles are Strictly regulated by choice, that's not how it works for humans, will explain. We'll need to take precautions always, so practical. Carr teased her finger is playing with the collar of his uniform. Only about some things, he replied with a grin, pulling her back toward the bed. Later, as they lay entwined in the dim light of his quarters, Kavara traced patterns on Will's chest, her thoughts racing. What will your people think? She asked. About us. We'll consider this some. We'll be surprised, others won't care, a few might disapprove, but humans have a long history of loving who they choose regardless of differences. Love of Kavar repeated the unfamiliar concept, sending a flutter through her chest. Will's eyes met hers, serious and intense. Yes, love is that too human a concept for Arian, perhaps, once she admitted, but I'm beginning to understand it better now. The station's intercom crackled to life before Will could respond. Commander Travis and Specialist Kavara to the command center immediately, Captain Reynolds' voice announced. Priority 1. They exchanged concerned glances the moment broken as they hurriedly dressed. Will caught Cav's arm. This conversation isn't over, he said firmly. No, she agreed, a small smile playing on her lips. I believe it's just beginning. When they arrived at the command center, they found Captain Reynolds standing before a large holographic display showing 2 ships approaching. Echo 17, sir, Will saluted. What's the situation? Reynolds' stern face was even more serious than usual. We've got visitors, a research vessel from Earth Command and a diplomatic cruiser from the Lien Directorate, both requesting immediate docking clearance. That's a unusual timing, Will commented carefully. Indeed, Reynolds replied, his eyes narrowing slightly as he looked between Will and Kavara, especially since they're both specifically requesting to speak with you two. Cav's face remained impassive, but Will could sense her tension. Did they state their purpose? Your cars, sir, the Earth vessel claims it's a routine scientific expedition, Reynolds said. The Liens are being less forthcoming, but I find it odd that both would arrive within hours of Dr. Parsons' report being transmitted. Will and Kavara exchanged glances. Their private affair had just become very public very quickly. Permission to prepare for the delegation, sir, Will requested formally. Reynolds nodded. Granted. And Travis, sir, whatever's going on between you two, the captain said quietly, I suggest you get your story straight before those ships dock. As they left the command center, Kerr's normally steady hand trembled slightly in Will's grasp. It will be okay, he assured her, though uncertainty tinged his voice. How can you be so sure? She asked. Will gave her a confident smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Because humans are stubborn that way. We make things okay even when they shouldn't be. Caver wished she could share his optimism as the distant ships grew larger on Echo 17's monitors. The docking procedures for both ships were nearly complete when the alarms blared throughout. Echo 17 red emergency lights bathed the corridors as Will and Kavara sprinted toward the command center. Status report, Will demanded as they burst through the doors. Captain Reynolds stood at the central console, his weathered face grim. Massive Skrill swarm approaching from the southern quadrant, biggest we've ever record reported. The main screen displayed a seething mass of creatures moving across the barren landscape toward the station. Their numbers were staggering, thousands where they typically encounter dozens. The recent storm must have disturbed their nesting grounds. Kavar suggested moving to her station to analyze the incoming data, or they've evolved, Reynolds muttered. Either way, our standard defenses won't hold against this many. Will studied the tactical display. What about the visiting ships? Can they assist? The Earth vessel is primarily scientific, minimal weapons, Reynolds replied. The Lien cruiser has decent firepower, but they're refusing to engage, saying it's not their conflict. Will's jaw tightened. Permission to speak with the Lion commander, sir, Reynolds nodded. Make it quick, those bugs will be at our doorstep in 20 minutes. The communication screen flickered to life, revealing the stern face of Commander Trin, his silver hair cropped short in traditional Lien military style, his scarlet skin darkened with age and experience. Commander Travis Turan acknowledged coldly, I understand. Your station faces a predicament we could use your help with, Will replied, maintaining a respectful tone despite his frustration. Your ship's weapon systems could make the difference between survival and annihilation. Turan's expression remained impassive. The Lien Directorate does not involve itself in local planetary conflicts. We are here on diplomatic business concerning Specialist Kavara and the concerning reports we've received. Will felt his temper rising but kept it in check. With all due respect, Commander, if this station falls, there won't be any diplomatic business to conduct. Kavara will be dead along with everyone else. A flicker of something concerned perhaps crossed Turan's features at the mention of Cav's potential fate. Before he could respond, Kavar stepped into view beside Will. Commander Turan, she greeted formally, I request permission to address you directly. Turan inclined his head slightly. Granted. Specialist, the humans of Echo 17 have defended this outpost against indigenous threats for 3 Years Kavara began, her voice steady and clear. They have shown remarkable courage, ingenuity and determination. Commander Travis in particular has displayed tactical brilliance that would impress even the Leyrin War College. Will glanced at her, surprised by the passionate defense. These qualities you describe are merely survival instincts. Turan dismissed. Primitive but effective. With respect, Commander Kavara continued, I have observed humans extensively. Their capabilities extend far beyond mere survival. They possess a unique combination of logical thinking and emotional intuition that allows them to solve problems in ways Leary would never consider. Turan's eyes narrowed. Your admiration for these humans seems excessive. Specialist, it is based on empirical evidence, Kavar countered, and today you have the opportunity to witness it firsthand. Join us in defending Echo 17 and judge human capabilities for yourself. A tense silence followed as Turan considered her words. Finally he gave a curt nod. Very well, the Lien cruiser will provide defensive support, but I will personally lead a contingent to observe these human tactics. The communication ended and will turn to Kavera with newfound appreciation. That was brilliant, he said quietly. It was logical, she replied with a small smile. Lien's respect evidence above all else. Now you must provide it. Reynolds approached them. The Earth vessel is deploying their security team as well. Not much, but every gun helps. We'll need a coordinate both forces. Will said, slipping into command mode. Kara, can you interface our tactical systems with the Lien cruiser? Already on it, she confirmed, her fingers flying over the holographic controls as they prepared for battle. Will found himself constantly aware of Kav's presence nearby. The thought of losing her to either the SCRS or the Lyran Directorate's disapproval fueled his determination. When Commander Tan and his team arrived at the station's defense center, Will was ready. He had devised a strategy that combined Lien precision with human adaptability, a plan that would showcase the best of both species. Commander Turan Will greeted, extending his hand in the human gesture of respect. Turan looked at the offered hand with mild distaste but eventually gave it a brief shake. Your tactical officer speaks highly of your abilities, Commander Travis. I look forward to an objective assessment. You'll get one, Will assured him. I've integrated your forces into our defense plan. Your soldiers will provide precision fire from the upper levels while my teams engage in mobile defense on the ground. Turan studied the tactical display and unorthodox approach. Lien doctrine would suggest concentrated firepower at key choke points, which would work if the SCRS attack conventionally. Will explain, but they learn and adapt. They'll find ways around static defenses. Fascinating, Turan murmured, though whether he meant the SCRS or Will's strategy was unclear as the final preparations were made. Kavara approached Will in a moment of relative privacy. Be careful out there, she said softly. Commander Turan will be watching your every move. Let him watch, Will replied with a confident smile. I've got something to prove now. What's that? Kavar asked. Will's eyes met hers, intense and determined. That humans are worthy of Lien's, that I'm worthy of you. Before she could respond, he leaned in and kissed her, a brief but passionate gesture that left no doubt about his feelings. When they separated, Will was surprised to see not embarrassment but pride in Kav's expression. Let them see, she whispered. Let them all see. The proximity alarm sounded, indicating the Skrill swarm had reached the outer perimeter. Will squeezed Kav's hand once more before donning his helmet. Time to show Commander Turan how humans fight, he said, his voice now amplified through his combat suit speakers, and maybe teach him a thing or two about human relationships while we're at it. As Will led his team toward the main airlock, Kavar returned to her station, aware of Turan's disapproving gaze following her. But for the first time since joining the Echo 17 mission, she didn't care about Lyran approval. Her focus was on the battle ahead and on the human commander who had shown her that some things were worth defying tradition. For the SCRS swarmed across Echo 17's outer defenses like a living tide, their chitinous bodies gleaming under the station's floodlights. Will led the ground team with practiced efficiency, his voice calm over the comm system as he directed the human and Lien forces. Alpha team reinforced the East Quadrant. Beta maintained suppressive fire on the main approach. Lien squad, your precision is needed at the ventilation access points from the command center. Kavara monitored the battle, her heart racing each time Will appeared on the tactical display. Commander Turan stood beside her, his expression inscrutable as he watched the human commander in action. His tactics are unorthodox. Ten observed. No Lien commander would divide forces so thinly. That's because Liens think linearly, Kavar replied, not taking her eyes off the display. Humans understand chaos. They don't just adapt to it, they harness it. Outside Will's strategy was working. The SCRS, expecting concentrated resistance, found themselves outmaneuvered by the mobile human teams. While Lien's snipers picked off those that broke through, the creature's numbers were overwhelming, but the defenders were holding until something changed. New Skrill variant detected, Kavara announced. Her voice tense as her scanners identified a larger, more armored creature emerging from the swarm. Commander, be advised, I see them. Wilk voice crackled through the comm. Bigger, smarter, and they're coordinating the smaller ones. The tactical situation deteriorated rapidly as the new Alpha SCRS directed their brethren toward vulnerable points in the Defense 1 section of the perimeter. Collapsed entirely, forcing a hasty retreat. Commander Turan will called over the comm, I need your team at Junction 7. Immediately, we have to seal that breach before they reach the life support systems. Turan hesitated only briefly. Before nodding, acknowledged. Moving to assist. Kavara watched as the Lien commander joined the battle personally, leading his elite guard toward the Bree. On the display, his blue marker converged with Will's red one as they coordinated their forces. For a moment it seemed the tide was turning. The combined human Lien force pushed the SCRS back from the critical systems, then disaster struck. An explosion rocked the station as a cluster of SCRS detonated some kind of biological charge against the outer hull. Alarms blared as atmospheric integrity was compromised in several sections through the chaos of the command center. Kay heard Will's voice over the comm, Commander Turan, behind you. The video feed showed what happened next in terrible clarity. 3 Alpha SCRS burst through a damaged wall panel directly behind the Lien commander. Will, seeing the threat, lunged forward without hesitation, tackling Tyran out of the way. As the creatures pounced, the feed dissolved into static as weapons fire and SCR screeches overwhelmed the audio. When it cleared, Car's heart stopped. Will lay motionless on the ground, his armor torn open across the chest and abdomen. Dark blood pooled beneath him. Commander Turan and his guards were dispatching the remaining SCRS, but Will wasn't moving. Medical team to Junction 7 now, Kavar shouted, already running for the door. Captain Reynolds called after her. Specialist, you're needed here, but she was gone, racing through the corridors toward the men she loved. When Kavara reached the scene, the medical team was already working on Will. His face was ashen, his breathing shallow. Commander Turan stood nearby, his uniform spattered with both Skrill ire and human blood. How bad? Kavar demanded, pushing past the Lien guards. Dr. Parsons looked up from where he was applying emergency sealant to Will's wounds, multiple lacerations, possible internal bleeding. We need to get him to medical immediately. As they lifted Will onto a stretcher, his eyes fluttered open, finding Car's face. He tried to speak but could only manage a weak cough. Don't talk, she whispered, taking his hand. Just stay with me. His finger squeezed hers briefly before he slipped back into unconsciousness in the medical bay. Kavara paced outside the surgical unit while Dr. Parsons and his team worked to save Will's life. Commander Turan watched her from across the room, his usual stoic demeanor subtly altered. He saved my life, Turan said, finally breaking the tense silence without hesitation or concern for his own safety. Kavara stopped pacing. That's who he is. That's who humans are at their core. Perhaps, Turan acknowledged, or perhaps it is simply who this particular human is. He stepped closer, studying her with newfound curiosity. You care deeply for him? It wasn't a question, but Kavara answered anyway. Yes, against all Lien teaching, against our biological imperative to preserve the purity of our lineage, against logic itself, Kavar admitted, and yet it feels more right than anything I've ever known. Turan was silent for a long moment. The Directorate sent me here to retrieve you, to end this inappropriately, Ison, and return you to Lia for reconditioning. Car's posture stiffened. And now I have witnessed something our scientists and philosophers have long debated, whether humans possess true nobility of spirit, or merely a crude facsimile of it. Turan gestured toward the surgical unit. Commander Travis answered that question when he placed himself between danger and Aryan he had no obligation to protect. Before Kavar could respond, Dr. Parsons emerged from surgery, his expression weary but relieved. He'll live, the doctor announced. The wounds were severe, but his enhanced physiology helped. He'll need time to recover, but there should be no permanent damage. Relief flooded through Kavara so intensely that she had to steady herself against the wall. Can I see him briefly? Dr. Parsons nodded. He's still sedated, but he should regain consciousness soon. Inside the recovery room, Will lay still, his powerful body now vulnerable beneath medical equipment and bandages. Kavara sat beside him, taking his hand in hers, marveling at how their different anatomies, 5 fingers to her 4, his 10 skin against her scarlet, could fit together so perfectly. I never taught you the most important human custom, she whispered to his sleeping form. Humans say I love you when they feel as I do now, so will Travis. I love you, please. Come back to me. To her surprise, his fingers twitched in hers, his eyes opened slowly, focusing on her face with effort. Kavara, he murmured, his voice hoarse. Are you okay? The station. I'm fine. The Station is secure, she assured him. The SCRS have been repelled. You should be resting, not worrying. A weak smile crossed his lips. Can't help it, it's a human thing, one of many human things I've come to appreciate, she replied, leaning closer, including Doggy style, he whispered with a hint of his usual mischief. Despite everything, Cabra laughed, the sound bright in the sterile room, especially that, though I believe there are many more human customs I have yet to learn, I'll teach you, he promised, his eyes growing heavy again as the medication pulled him back towards sleep. All of them as Will drifted off. Kerr became aware of Commander Turan standing in the doorway, having witnessed their exchange. His expression had softened further, something like understanding in his ancient eyes. The Directorate will not approve, he said quietly. Kavara straightened her shoulders. Then perhaps it is time for the Directorate to evolve, as all successful species must. Terran's mouth twitched in what might have been the beginning of a smile. Perhaps it has come, Specialist, we have much to discuss. While Commander Travis recovers, there may be a path forward that neither of our species has considered before. With one last look at Will's sleeping form, Kra followed Turan from the room, hope blooming in her chest for the first time since the ships had arrived 2 weeks after the Skrill attack. Echo 17 had largely returned to normal operations. The damaged sections had been repaired, the fallen honored, and the station's defenses reinforced against future incursions. Yet for Will and Kavra everything had changed. Will stood before the mirror in his quarters, adjusting the formal dress uniform that felt stiff and unfamiliar after months of combat armor. His wounds had healed remarkably well, another benefit of his enhanced physiology, though occasional twinges reminded him of his close call. A knock at his door preceded Captain Reynolds's entrance. Almost ready, Commander Reynolds asked, his usual gruff demeanor softened by the occasion. As ready as I'll ever be, Will replied, tugging at his collar. Still not sure how Commander Turan pulled this off. Reynolds allowed himself a rare smile.